Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We are in session 3 of our Teaching and Learning Conference. And today, in this session, we are going to learn about the foundations of Holocaust education. Our presenter for today is Kim Klett. And so she is a facilitator, I'm an instructor with Echoes and Reflections. And I'm actually going to read to you and have some introductions on who Kim is. Kim is a wonderful human being. And you're going to learn a lot about just why we should be learning about the Holocaust and how we can do it in a way that is respectful and not scary for some people. But Kim is a senior facilitator for Echoes and Reflections, which is a program that does offer a lot of content, curriculum, and resources and additional professional learning. And so if you are interested in more from Echoes and Reflections, please reach out to both either Kim or myself. She has been with and taught English in Arizona for 31 years. She did create multiple semester-long courses on teaching Holocaust, teaching literature, and she has done work with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. She is also a teacher ambassador for the Defiant Curriculum and Pathways for Peace Fellow. She is working very hard on ensuring that we do teach about social justice and learning for justice for all. She does serve on the board of the Phoenix Holocaust Association, and she's also the Deputy Executive Director for the Educators Institute for Human Rights, working with teachers on post-conflict societies in areas such as Bosnia and Rwanda. So with that, welcome Kim, and thank you for being here today, and I will launch this over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Janie. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad we're on the same time zone. It makes it so much easier. I've been working with teachers on the East Coast, and it's like, wait, what time is it? So anyway, yes, we are going to be talking about foundations of Holocaust education. If you're interested this afternoon, I'll be doing 3 other sessions that are all different from this one, and you're welcome to join those. We're going to be looking at teaching about genocide after lunch, contemporary anti-Semitism, and then Holocaust through the humanities. So those are the other sessions that I'll be doing. As Janie said, Echoes and Reflections, we've been around since 2005. We've worked with more than 125,000 educators in that time, and we do a lot of programs, both online and in person. So again, if you like what you see and you'd like to bring it to your district or your region or your city or your school, as long as you can get about 25 teachers together, we will do this for free. So happy to do this. Echoes and Reflections is a joint program. We have the Anti-Defamation League, or the ADL, as one of our partners or groups that puts this together. They've been around for over 100 years, fighting for the civil rights of all people. The USC Shoah Foundation, which was founded by Steven Spielberg after he made Schindler's List, and he made it his mission to record Holocaust and other survivors of other genocides. And they've gotten well over 54,000 testimonies now recorded. And then we also work with Yad Vashem, which is the museum and memorial in Jerusalem, Israel. And they provide a lot of our primary source materials. So we will be using both the slideshow and the website today. I'll be taking you to that as well, because my goal really is to make sure that you feel comfortable using that website. There's so many great resources on it. So our objectives today, we want to explore that sound pedagogy for Holocaust education. We want to examine instructional enhancements to support student learning. That's what we'll see on the website. And same with the next one, discovering those classroom-ready assets. You're going to have access to lesson plans, visual history testimonies, and primary source materials. This is stuff that you literally could do on Monday back at school. We want to enhance also your personal knowledge about the Holocaust, including the history of anti-Semitism, and then build confidence and capacity to teach this complex subject. So if you have a pen or a pencil, I'd like you to jot down as I'm going through these, maybe 1 or 2 of these pedagogical principles that you think you do well in your teaching of the Holocaust, or just in your teaching in general, if you don't teach about the Holocaust. And then also think about maybe one or two that you would like to work on, or dig into more deeply as we're working together today. So I'll go through these just real quickly. We always want to make sure that we're defining terms. If I use the word camp, for example, I want to make sure I'm clear with my students that there were different types of camps. So there were transit camps where people were there for a little while and then they were sent somewhere else. Like Terezin is one of those examples. And then people were often sent to Auschwitz from there. And then we have labor and concentration camps. Auschwitz itself was a labor camp. There was work that was done there. And if you've read Elie Wiesel's Night, that he definitely explains that. And then there are the killing centers, of which there were 6 in Poland, and those were like Birkenau, which was part of Auschwitz. So we want to be really clear when we're using our terms and make sure that the students know what we're talking about. We also want to provide that background on the history of anti-Semitism. We are actually going to do a little bit of that in this session. We want to contextualize the history. Again, if you're teaching the book Night and you just give it to the kids and say, here's this great book we're going to read, and that's it, the kids are going to think that the Holocaust starts in about 1944, that it takes place mostly in Auschwitz, and deals with Hungarian prisoners, right? That's going to be their knowledge base. So we need to put it into that context, into that bigger picture of what was going on at that time then in Poland, what was happening in Germany, what was happening in Czechoslovakia, right? In these other places, and at different times outside of the book as well. We want to teach the human story, this 4th point, and we do that with those visual history testimonies. We're going to watch a few of them today, and you'll see what I mean. It's not just numbers, right? We want to use primary source materials. Again, every lesson that Echoes and Reflections has includes primary source materials. We want to try to make the Holocaust relevant. I know sometimes that's difficult, so I'll make a few points as I'm going today to help you do that. We want to encourage inquiry-based learning and critical thinking. Again, all of our lessons are built that way. We want to try to foster empathy. I know that one's difficult too, because how do you measure empathy? But we really want to try to do that through these lessons. And I think you'll see that the lessons definitely make a great attempt at that. We also want to ensure a supportive learning environment. So we want to make sure that we're not using like simulations, that we're not trying to shock or scare the students with graphic images. We want to keep that safe space. We like to say that we want to bring the students safely in and take them safely out of this learning. So again, please jot down 1 or 2 of these principles that you think you do well in your classroom, and then 1 or 2 that you would like to work on or explore more deeply today. And while you're doing that, I wanted to mention, please, if you have questions during the session, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask, or put it in the chat box. I am happy. Like I said, I want to make sure that you understand where to find things, where to get the resources. So if I go too fast, because we only have an hour, I'm trying to go as quickly as I can and pack in as much information as I can. But please feel free to stop me if you need further explanation, or, just need me to go back and explain something better. So one of our principles ties into our first activity, and that's providing background on the history of anti-Semitism. So I want to start with this map. This map, I'll show you where it is. It's on our website. But if you are using this with your students, and you've got a little key over here, so these and the numbers here are the Jewish population in each country. And this is in as of the beginning of January 1933. And then this is the percent of the total population. So, looking at this in Poland, there were over 3 million Jewish people. in January of 1933, and that was about 10% of the population. Okay, and so you can see in the other countries similar numbers. So going to questions, what do you think your students might be, what might they be surprised by looking at this map? And again, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat box either way. What would surprise your students about this? Or what surprises you maybe too? And again, you can put it in the chat box or unmute yourself, whichever is easier. What's surprising about this map? Yeah, their percentage in Israel. And notice they call it the land of Israel, right? And it's very small at this point, right? It's going to rise, of course, later. Again, remember, this is early 1933. What else might be surprising to us or to our students? Yeah, the percentage. Thank you, Jordana. The percentage in Germany, because my students always say, well, if it's not even 1%, then why would the Nazis want to get rid of such a small number? Like, what's the big deal, right? If it's such a small percentage. I like the fact too that they have the numbers, right? Because my kids are like, wow, 525,000 is less than 1%, right? To them, that's kind of interesting too. But yeah, and so that brings up that question. Why would you want to get rid of such a small number of people in a country? I think another thing that's surprising to students is just the map and how many places Jewish people were. Because again, if we're talking about the beginning of the year, beginning of a unit for a lesson on the Holocaust, they often don't think outside of Germany, right? They think everything happened in Germany, maybe Poland if they've studied it a little bit, but they don't know. And, down into North Africa, even, right? And these numbers over here, like in the Middle East as well. And so they're surprised by that also. So this is something that's good to start with. And again, all kinds of things that could be done with this map and that they could learn from it. But I'm going to go on to the next piece, and that is going back to our definitions. And what is anti-Semitism? So I'm going to give you a minute. Go ahead and read that on your own. So first of all, and again, you can unmute or put it in the chat box, any thoughts or questions about this very brief? I liked it because it is succinct. Any questions or thoughts on this definition? So I want to take it back to the first sentence. Anti-Semitism is the term for hatred of Jews as a group or a concept. Okay, so we can understand, I think, the idea of a group of people. Today, we would see them as a religious group. We might see them as a cultural group, right? But what about this word concept? How could we see a group of people as a concept? Any ideas on that? Seeing people, a group of people as a concept. Yeah, thank you, Robin. Stereotypes. I think that's a piece of it, right? And think about especially, I don't know about your students, where you are, but I know here in Mesa, Arizona, where I taught, we didn't have many Jewish students. Every now and then I might get one at my school, but hardly ever. So overwhelmingly, my students would not have probably known a Jewish person. And so to them, it might seem like a concept because they don't know somebody in that group, right? And so they might see it more as a concept, and it might be based on those stereotypes. Yeah, Janie, I agree. It is abstract. A concept, it's a huge idea, right? And again, to our students, that could be the Jewish faith. I used to take students to a synagogue. We have a synagogue less than a mile away. Um, and I would take the students there, and the rabbi did a great, just a little lesson, Q&A about Jewish faith. And as soon as my kids walked in, they would look at the synagogue and they'd say, this looks just like my church, and so there that concept was broken down, right? They made a connection, because it looked like something that they were familiar with. And so I think that's an important piece. I use this definition with my students, and I found it to be really helpful. And we definitely talked about this part a lot, to break that down. There's also a quick overview, again, of the history of it. I'll show you next where you can get a longer article about it, but this is a nice place to start. It also, I don't know if you've noticed, but they used to hyphenate. It used to be anti-hyphen Semitism. And I think it explains well why that isn't the case anymore here, right? That there is no such thing as Semitism. So how can you be against something that doesn't really exist, right? So it's just one word now. So I like that as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing.
That's it. Sorry, Kim, that is a super interesting point, that I like just never thought about until you just actually said that out loud. And I think that's an interesting point to help clarify with our students what that can and cannot mean.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the implications of that. I literally never put that together until you just said that out loud. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fascinating.
and it does, it really gets the kids thinking about, the word. And I'm going to show you this article next that, Robin, I think that will answer your question. So I'm going to take you to the website. So let me get this opened up and sharing with you. And you can either follow along with me, or if you're a hands-on learner and want to do it on your computer, just don't close out of here. And I'll show you how to get there. So it's just echoesandreflections.org. You can see it up here. There's no registration. It's super easy. You can put your students on it. I always have people ask me, well, where are the answer keys to things? We don't have answer keys on here. It's all very much critical thinking, and, there are just no quizzes or answer keys. But this is the way that it works. So you come up here, and most of the time you're going to want to go to teach. All right, so you go to echoesandreflections.org and then click teach. Over here on the left, this is our pedagogical principles that we just went over. You're going to want to go to lesson plans, and you can see there are 12 of them. We just added another one. So we have studying the Holocaust, and these are really units. Anti-Semitism, Nazi Germany, the ghettos. So you can see they kind of go in chronological order. The final solution, liberation, Jewish resistance, rescue and righteous among the nations, complicity and responsibility, justice, life and memory after the Holocaust, the Green Glass Unit on contemporary anti-Semitism. I'll be doing that this afternoon. And then also our newest unit that I'll also be doing, which is teaching about genocide. So these are all complete units. We are going to jump into the unit on anti-Semitism so I can show you. They're all set up exactly the same way. They're super easy to follow. You always have a quote from one of the survivor testimonies. You have a glossary of keywords, and these are all unique to every unit. So they're going to change from unit to unit. This beginning part is for you as the teacher, and teachers love this part because, again, if you're a brand new teacher or you're new to teaching about the Holocaust, it gives you step by step everything you need. You have your essential questions, you have your objectives, you have your background information. Over here, you have a video toolbox. It's a 15-minute video from our partners at Yad Vashem that just gives you more information. This could be used with students, but always watch them first. Like the one in the final solution, it's a little bit graphic. We try to stay away from graphic images, but always check them first, of course. If you're like me and you've been teaching this for a long time, it's still good practice, right? Good to look at all of these pieces. And it's also great because if you already have a Holocaust unit, you can kind of look through these and select more, kind of pick and choose pieces that you want to supplement your unit with. You have your academic standards. These are unique for every unit as well. So if you need to turn in lesson plans to an admin or a department chair, they're there for every unit, and it shows how they connect to the standards. And then it's broken into the lesson plans. And you can see, again, it has everything you need. It has questions, no answers, but questions. You have testimonies. We're going to watch a few of these in just a minute. You have articles, defining stereotypes. Somebody mentioned stereotypes earlier. And so here is, sorry, my dogs are barking. Here's that definition of anti-Semitism that we just did. But Robin, you asked about, you look back at your question, the modern scientific thinking. This article covers that. And so this is a 2-page article that you could, and all of our handouts and things are downloadable. You can print them. I like to have my students write on their papers, so I always printed most of my stuff. But if you use like Canvas or Google Classroom, you can download these into those as well. And this breaks it down into time periods. So anti-Semitism when Christianity began and what that looked like. And then how did that change by the Middle Ages? And then in the 19th century, and this is where it gets into that scientific, those scientific pieces. And then it's also picked up a little bit here with Hitler and the Nazi Party with eugenics and things like that. So this is an article that I used every year to help teach that. If we had more time in a longer session, we would read this together and kind of break it down, but we don't have that time. So what I'm going to do, though, is show you 2 testimonies. I'm going to start with Margaret Lambert. They always have a brief bio here that tells a little bit about the person, and I always read these to my students. She was born in 1914 in Lappheim, Germany. She loved sports. It lists all the sports that she did. She was accepted to study physical education at a German university in 1933. But because of the rapidly changing political climate, she was advised to postpone those studies. In the fall of 33, she accepted an opportunity to study in London. Later, she came back to Germany to become a part of their national team for the 1936 Berlin Olympics. They pretty much forced her to come back. They threatened her family because they wanted to show countries, including the US, that had talked about boycotting the Olympics. They wanted to show, oh, yeah, we have Jewish athletes. And so they brought her back for that reason. And then right after, dropped her as soon as the other countries dropped their boycott talk. And so she was dropped from the team. And she was 25 years old when the war began. So let's listen to Margaret, and she's going to begin by talking about like how life was before Hitler came into power and what her world was like at that point.
I had a wonderful time. I had my mother and father, and I had an older brother, about 2 years older than I. And once we got over the sibling rivalry, we got to be very good friends, my brother and I. And my parents found out pretty soon that what Margaret wanted, Margaret got. And they let me be my own because I was not the usual child. But I had my own way of dressing. I didn't like what my mother got for me. I wouldn't wear it. And I was strong-willed. And I knew what I wanted to do very early on in life. I wanted to be a coach, physical education teacher. My parents thought I was a little freaky with all this business about sports that I was so very into. I skated, I skied, I swam, I ran, I climbed. Through my sport activities, there were more non-Jewish people involved than Jewish people. I was the only girl in my class. I was the only Jew in my class, and it never made any difference. I mean, I never felt any anti-Semitism until a certain time. I always knew I was Jewish, but our house, there was no religion practiced, really. I always say, my father said, be a decent human being, that should be your religion, and I think I have practiced that pretty much.
Okay, so what might your students relate to from Margaret's testimony? Anything that would be relevant for them?
Probably just playing sports and being strong-willed and wanting to do what they want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, that strong will, that kind of almost rebellion, right, against your parents. Like she says, wanting to wear the clothes she wanted to wear, and yeah, the sports for sure was a connection. My students really loved listening to Margaret. Yeah, and I think that she helps with that relevancy. A lot of times our kids see somebody older and they think, well, I don't have anything in common with that person, right? But her life, they do have connections to that. And notice how she was talking about, like, everything was just normal, right, for her until she said that certain time. The other thing I like about Margaret's is, again, because my students typically don't know a Jewish person, I like the way that she mentions at the end that her religion, her father said, was just being a good person. And that's a great place to talk to students about. Just like any religion, you have people who are very strict and adhere very strictly to that religion, and you have people who don't at all, and you have people all in between, right? And because, again, when we go back to those stereotypes, my students, when they think of a Jewish person, typically thought of, the man with the hat and the beard, and they had those stereotypes of an Orthodox Jewish person. And Margaret's family wasn't of that at all. So it's interesting to have that conversation as well. So her next part is actually in the next unit. So I'm going to go over here to this little hamburger thing, and we're going to go to Unit 3 for Nazi Germany. And not all of the survivors are in different units, and not all of them have more than one testimony, but Margaret does. And this way you can kind of see we have maps, all kinds of great things in this unit as well. But here's Margaret again. And now she's going to talk about how things did change after 1933 for her.
It started in 1933, really. But I had very good friends of whom I knew that they were members of the Nazi Party since 1928. And she was one of my best friends. She didn't care that I was Jewish, and I didn't care that she was a Nazi. She was one of my sports friends, and we got along very well. But then, of course, in 1933, everything changed. Like overnight, you could not go into a public place. No restaurants, no swimming pools, no movies, nothing. You were not allowed in any public place anymore. And the people that you knew wouldn't talk to you anymore. Friends that you had, they would shun you, most of them. Not because they hated us all of a sudden, but they were all afraid, because that was the way it was. You talk to a Jew and you'll be punished. It was very hard. I was 19 years old, and all of a sudden I was shut off from everything. I got a letter from my sports club in Ulm that I wasn't welcome there anymore because I was Jewish, and that was the thing that I loved to do most, as I said before, sports. And all of a sudden that was finished. There was nothing I could do. We just were really vegetating, if you want to call it that. So.
Right. So any thoughts or questions on Margaret Lambert's testimony, her second one? And so again, for our students, you know, that quick change that happens for Jewish people. And I think it's really interesting for them to see. I wanted to show you another asset that you can use with these testimonies. Sorry, I'm trying not to go too fast, make anybody dizzy. At the beginning of every unit, we have this testimony reflection. And I love this sheet. I made a copy of it. I did it double-sided for my students. And every time we'd watch one of these testimonies, they knew to pull it out. And so they would put like Margaret Lambert, here they summarize. And I would just have the kids watch it first, and then I'd give them like 5 minutes to fill this out, right? And so they would summarize what she said. And then here, I love this column because they can talk about body language, the inflections, the pauses, right? That can say so much, like how she ended that second one with so, you know, and just leaves it hanging. I think that's really important. And then here in the third column, they can either write questions that they had. My kids always had so many questions about the testimonies. They wanted to know more about the people and such. And they can also put down their feelings, you know, how they felt about what they listened to. And I would have them do, like for Margaret, when we did watch both of hers, and I would have them put her twice, you know, because each one's different. They're going to notice different things in each of those. So that's a really good asset as well that I wanted to point out. Okay, so whoops. It's pausing me for some reason. Any questions so far with the website? Okay, so we are going to go back to, let me get this down here. There we go. We're going to go back to the unit on anti-Semitism. And we're going to do an activity. I was going to do a breakout room for this, but we don't have enough people. So you would all be your own breakout room, and that would be no fun. So we will just do this together. Because one of the pieces, again, I'm trying not to go too fast. One of the pieces with anti-Semitism that comes in really heavy is, oops, I went too far, is the propaganda. And so I've scrolled down. This particular lesson is called Nazi Anti-Semitic Ideology and Propaganda. And again, it's in Unit 2. And so we're going to look at, oh, there's the map that we looked at before, the Jewish communities map. But I want to look at these Nazi propaganda examples. There is a graphic organizer that your kids can fill out with this as well, if you choose. But these are all examples of propaganda that was directed toward children in the years of Hitler, so 33 to 39 for these, and they would have continued, of course. This is a book cover. I'm just going to leave it right there. Unless I download it, I can't show you the whole thing, but you get the idea. The book was called The Poisonous Mushroom. And we talked about stereotypes before. What what stereotypes would your kids pick up on here about Jewish people?
Prominent nose and possibly the beard.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The prominent nose, the beard, like I mentioned earlier. My guess is it's read either to connect them to communism, which the Nazis tried to do a lot, or like connect them to the devil, which they also did. Just in case you don't get it, there's a Mogen David, the Star of David. And this was a book that was very popular in Nazi Germany in 1938. Yeah, Janie, thank you. Yeah, the mushroom is the hat, right? Associated with Jewish people often. This came out in 1938. It was very popular. It was actually a popular Christmas gift for children. And it's a book that includes stories. So the story in it, each of these has a little caption. So the story for this one is where a mother tells her child they're out picking mushrooms. She says, just as it is difficult to distinguish between a poisonous mushroom and an edible mushroom, it is difficult to distinguish between a good Jew. And notice she doesn't say good and bad. She says, and a lying, thieving Jew, right? So this was promoted to children. The publisher and illustrator were very famous. They did a lot of propaganda throughout Nazi Germany. And I'm just going to show you a couple, again, in the interest of time, just a couple of examples. This is one I think our kids can relate to because what's the message here? What message would they be trying to tell children?
What's in his hand?
Go
He
ahead.
has a cone of candy.
Okay.
Yeah. We tell our children to stay away from strangers, not to take candy from them because it could have dangerous ramifications.
Right, exactly. My kids, when they would get this picture, they would always say stranger danger, right? Because that's what they learn. And that's exactly what's happening here. You can tell the little boy is kind of thinking. The little girl has her hand out, like she's ready to take it. Again, the stereotypes, the prominent nose, he seems to be kind of leering at them. The fact that he's wearing this heavy coat, like maybe he's trying to hide something, all kinds of warning flags. And you get the little descriptor here that he says, here, my little one, you get something very sweet, but as a reward, you both must come with me. Some people even kind of see some like Hansel and Gretel, right? Kind of imagery with this. Absolutely. So this is something, again, that was taught to children that you watch out for Jewish people. They're dangerous, they're bad, they're going to take you. And if you read the rest of the story, we don't have them on our website, but if you Google the poisonous mushroom, you can find the entire stories. And the boy is thinking, because what he's remembering is what his parents told him about Jewish people. And so he grabs his sister's hand and runs off and yells, about this horrible Jewish person. And he gets rewarded with candy when he gets home by his parents for doing the right thing. I'm going to show you one more. There are 5 in total in this, but again, because we have a short time period today, I want to show you this one because my students struggled a little bit with this one because I only see one thing that's an anti-Semitic trope. And what is that? Any ideas? And my kids didn't always get it, depended on where we were in the year, what we'd learned. Has to do with this because the caption reads, whenever you see a crucifix, think of the horrible murder of Jesus by the Jews. And so promoting Jews as Christ killers, which of course the Catholic Church refuted in I think 1962, something like that, with the Nostra Aetate, saying, no, it was the Romans, stop blaming the Jews. they did not do this. But that's the only overtly anti-Semitic piece here. But what you want to talk to your students about this picture is that it's also propaganda showing like the good German family, right? They all have the blonde hair, of course. But the fact that they're all out working in the fields, right? The dad might be in the military, he might be working another job, whatever, he's not there, but mom is still out there working hard. She has this tool in her hand, right? She has this bag of something that they've been either weeding or harvesting. Even the baby, right? They're not rich. Little boy doesn't even have shoes. I doubt the girl does either. They're not wealthy, but this is a good German family, right? So propaganda can also try to show positive things. So that's a great lesson to use with the students for this one. All right, so I want to go back to our slides. And you're seeing the pictures that we just looked at, right? Let me know if not. We looked at Margaret Lambert.
I had a wonderful time. It started in 1930, mother and father, but I had very good friends.
Sorry, there we go. There we go. So for our second activity today, I want to look a little bit at the final solution, which is Unit 5 in our lessons. And we're going to look at some photographs. I like using photographs a lot. I've found that over the years, my students are really reluctant readers, even more so now, but they love looking at photographs. So these are photographs from what's called the Auschwitz album. This was an album, a photo album that was found actually by a survivor. And it has pictures of a Hungarian transport. So I always use this again. If you teach the book Night by Elie Wiesel, this is a great resource to use. He's not pictured in these, but he would have been in these cattle cars like this, very similar situation. And so again, looking at the people, looking at individuals, maybe even asking your students to hone in on one person, right? And think about what that person's going through at that moment. You see a lot of children over here on the left, really young children. And who's not in the picture? Who don't you see?
Men.
Yeah.
Except there might be a little boy, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're seeing women and children, right, at this point. So they've been separated at this point. Some of them still have bags with them, right? Nothing real big, but maybe just some personal effects that they still have with them. The kids always notice like this woman has the star, right? You don't see it on everybody. It might be on another layer of clothing because oftentimes they would layer their clothing when they arrived or when they were deported because they could bring more that way, right? So, and depending on the season that they were brought. This is a photo that probably happened shortly after that because they're a little more orderly. So here are the men lined up. Here are the women. The women, it's a little more haphazard, it looks like. You can tell it's Birkenau because of the gate here. This is what was called the ramp where the trains arrived. And again, the selections took place. Anything surprising about this photo? Anything your students might find surprising? My students were surprised by how seemingly few men in uniform they noticed up here. And the fact that they're just kind of casually Looks like they're chatting, like no big deal, nothing to see here kind of thing. Right. And that's another good discussion. There were not a lot of SS at these camps. And this is the killing center. This is Birkenau. But they didn't need a lot of SS because they had lots of other people who were guards, and they made the prisoners, do things. I think we'll see that in the next picture. But they had other people doing the dirty work. So they can just kind of stand around at this point, right, and watch over everything as it's happening. It's very systematic. Now it tells us down here, and again, you could cut the explanation off, but we're told that this is women being led to the gas chamber. So this is farther back in the camp. They probably don't know where they're going or what's happening. It looks pretty calm. A lot of the women, were with the children, and they were told you're going to have a shower. They've been on that boxcar for maybe, a week, maybe even a little longer. And so a shower probably sounds pretty good at this point. They have no idea what's happening next. They're weak, they're tired. Some of them may be sick. They're worried about their children. They're assuming that the men have been taken off to work. And again, you just see a few people in uniform over here again, chatting. Here is a guy with a gun. So there were weapons for sure. There were people guarding this. But overall, it went smoothly because they're deceiving these people to the very end. This one is probably, that's probably the grandmother with her grandchildren. It's a very sad photograph. Her daughter, they might have gotten separated, but it also could be that her daughter, maybe she told her, hey, sign up for work. I'll take the kids. I'll take care of the kids. Again, not knowing where they're going. So these photos can be very powerful. They can be a good piece, again, to analyze, to see these steps. Notice they're not graphic in nature. You're not seeing any dead in them or anything like that, but the stories. So again, think about your students. Think about that safe environment, if these are going to work or not in that. And think about too, do you want to look at them together like we are? Do you want to put them in groups? What kind of context do you want to give them? Do you want to give it with the captions or not, right? But the final solution is a piece that a lot of people teach because it's a huge part of this. And again, these are good reminders of, not using those graphic images. Again, the stories are plenty graphic enough, and being careful with what we're using in the classroom. The final solution unit has some really good pieces. It has excerpts from the book Night that I've mentioned a few times. It has excerpts from Man's Search for Meaning. I think there's an excerpt from Primo Levi's book Survival in Auschwitz. There's artwork. It's really a rich unit. So definitely check that out. So I want you to go back to thinking about those principles that you jotted down at the beginning. Those that you do well and those that you want to explore more. And I've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but think about how those maybe help you after looking at those pictures from the final solution, how you maybe understand those principles better, right? Like, again, the putting into context, the defining the terms, the making that safe environment, right? And keep that in mind. And then also how the unit, and again, we didn't have much time to explore it today, but when you go back to it and check it out, think about that, how that will help your students better understand the final solution. And think about any of these resources that we looked at today, how those might help you in your lesson on the final solution, or on Sorry, my battery was plugged in and it isn't. Give me 1 second. I'll keep talking. But also, there we go. How the anti-Semitism unit might also help you with this. And so just a couple of things, because we're going to do an evaluation in just a minute. I also wanted to show you this. These are 10 lessons that Echoes and Reflections has recently added. They're on that teach page that I told you to go to. And they're called student activities. These are activities that should take your students about an hour to do. They could do them on their own. You could assign them, they could do them in class or as homework, but they're really good. And they kind of go again chronologically. So there's one on what is anti-Semitism, why didn't it end after the Holocaust, media literacy skills. I love this one on what was Jewish life like before the Holocaust. And again, there are 10 of these. So definitely check those out for your students. We also have additional programs. So the one column I didn't take you to, well, I only took you to one, but we did not go to prepare. If you go to prepare, you can find webinars. We have a calendar there. We do webinars like 4 or 5 a month. They're really good. Most of them are recorded. A lot of times they were when I was teaching. But we also have online courses that you can take for free. We have an advanced learning program where you can actually go to Israel, all kinds of great stuff there. So definitely check that. And yes, those are all free. Echoes, there's no button to pay anywhere on our website because everything's free for teachers. So that's the awesome part of it, I think. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute because I'm going to get a link for you for an evaluation and make sure that you did your sign in for Janie. We're just doing the one, Echoes has one, but I didn't want to have a bunch of time for that. So
So
let me get,
so after doing that, Kim, no worries. The attendance link and the survey link for this session is in the chat. So please make sure that you do so. And then I know Kim has one just for herself too with Echoes and Reflections. So if you would be so kind to do that, that would be great. As she's
Yes.
putting that up,